Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ankerstar Wealth Morning Show. I'm your host, Steve Ankerstar, and today we're going to talk about three things. We're going to do a 2023 market in a review, and it's been a market that's really bifurcated, if you will. You've got the Dow that's down for the year, the S&P is up a little bit, and the Nasdaq's up huge. So we're going to kind of break that down and talk to why that is, and a little bit about how that plays into the rest of the year. We're going to talk about the second topic we're going to talk about is Montana's TikTok ban. The governor passed that last night, so that takes effect on January 1st. So there's lots of times for legal challenges there, but what that means for you and the protection of your data. And then last topic of the day will be why $100,000 salary, which used to be like the goal, right? If I could just get there, I'd be good to go. Why do people with $100,000 salary feel like they're not rich? So we'll kind of break down why that is and peel that back a little bit. But before we begin, as reminders, financial education presentation, you have to do your own due diligence for acting upon anything you hear in this presentation. Full disclaimer information is available at ankerstarwealth.com. Now let's get started with that market review. All right, here's the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Here's your chart. We're just going to go year to date on all these charts. So you have the Dow. This is year to date. It's showing that, well, let's see where that's not quite a year to date chart because it would start in I guess it is January 1st there. It's showing up a little bit. Let's see. So that's the 1 year change. There's the year to date change. It's showing up 0.5% after yesterday. So it's barely up. It's off 0.3 after, this 0.3% this morning. So basically, let's call it flat. When you look at the history of the Dow, when you go out to like a 5-year chart, yes, it ran up nicely. Here was our big COVID spike, ran up pretty big out of that, and it's kind of been out of favor, certainly been out of favor in 2023. Now, if you look at the SPY is a little bit different story, and we'll go to a year-to-date chart, and right here, so there you can see the SPY is up. Let's talk numbers first. 8% on the year. There's the chart. So that's pretty good when you think of the normal stock market returns. 10 to 12% has been the historic number. Most people, and I agree that that's not necessarily the way that it's going to be forward, more like 8 to 10%. But either way, you've made a bunch of money as long as you were invested. And again, when you think about your own psychology, it seems like everything is gloom and doom. Right? The rate hikes, the end of the world recession, we're going to default and treasuries are no good. I mean, there's so much negativity in the news. And then OMG, we have an election coming up next year, which always brings out the best in people. That's sarcasm. So, it seems that like a terrible time to invest. Why would I put money into investing? Well, it's still the U.S. economy, and it's growing like gangbusters. So here's the 5-year chart. Here you have your big COVID spike. Back in here, nice run up to 2022. 2022 is almost one of those years that thou shall not be spoken of, to forget about it. But again, a nice 8% move up so far this year. However, here at Ankerstar Wealth, we are tech heavy in companies that are poised to change the world. Can't guarantee that they will, but certainly poised to. And the NASDAQ has been on absolute tear this year. So if you like what you see in your accounts, high fives across the board for simply sticking with technologies and best of breed companies that change the world. So it started down here up at 12.5. I won't do math. I'll just look. So 19.67% up on the year. So a 20% gain on the year, including the 0.3 that it's up today in technology. Now, the story is you got to be able to stick with it when it's ugly out. So here's your 5-year chart in tech. Here's your COVID spike back in here. And then it had this huge run up, 2022, large sell off. But here's the beginning of 23. And, it's up 20% this year. And you're like, Steve, can it move up another 20%? Yeah, absolutely it can. Look where it was back in 2021, right? We're not even close. We're not even knocking on the door of it. So just to get back to even, you're looking at, to do math here. So about every 1,000 points is 10%. You're looking at another 30, 35% upside from here to get back to all-time highs, right? So a lot to like in the tech world. Okay, moving topics real quick. Montana and TikTok. Here's your headline for today. Now, there's been talk of a nationwide ban. That is largely stalled. There's a lot of, First Amendment things with you can't use something in this country, and I get that. I respect that. I fought for that. So this whole let's ban something for because of how they're going to use data, slippery slope, right? Right into George Orwell. You start banning, some things. So I don't think it will happen nationwide. I don't think the Montana TikTok ban will stand. But when you break it down, here's what they're actually saying: is it's not the users that are being banned. It's not you and I and our kids. It is it's the company. So it's unlawful for, here's the paragraph I'm looking for. Make it unlawful, again, this is in 2024, for Google and Apple app stores to offer TikTok within the state, but will not impose any penalties on individuals using the app. So you can use it. Just Apple and Google can't offer it to you inside the state of Montana. I don't know. I'm sure there's plenty of people that never leave the state that they're in. But if you are fairly traveled, you would simply download it somewhere else, right, and bring it back to your home state. I don't know. So we'll see. I don't think there's much of this news story. It's not time to try to figure out a way to play this in the market. However, I do want to bring up a project to you that you may or may not have heard of called Project Texas. And again, I'm sitting here in Texas, so that's why it's important to me. But here, that last line of the article. TikTok's getting ahead of this. Do have a client that works here in Austin with TikTok, that is saying they're very aware of the sensitivity of the issue. TikTok has said over and over again they're not giving American information to the Chinese government. And if they asked to, they would refuse. They've said that over and over and over. Their parent ByteDance has echoed that. However, there is plenty of just natural fervor in the air here in the U.S. about the Chinese government stealing our info. Whether that's right or wrong, you decide. However, TikTok's trying to get in front of it, calling this Project Texas initiative, which is a standalone entity for all American user data to stay here on servers in the U.S. I think that's a win-win across the board. They're working on it. That sounds like a big project, right? If somebody said, "Hey, Steve, I need you to work on something for me," take all user data and keep it here in the U.S. Okay, challenging problem. We got smart people in the world, so hey, we'll figure that out, right? So I think that's probably the answer, and then that's going to kind of bury this whole thing. There will still be a whole slew of the society that doesn't trust that, but it's better than just outright banning people's ability to for an app, right? Because if you ban one, where do you stop? Where do you stop? I think is the question. Okay, last topic of the day: why do so many people making $100,000 a year don't feel rich? Well, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And it's the lifestyle you live. Everybody's life is different. I fully respect that. I'm not trying to judge or look down or up at anybody out there. All I'm saying is, if your total income coming in, for most people, that's a job. There are some people that are born into wealth and trust funds and all that. It's different math for them. But for most people, right? You're raised in a household that is its own little entity, and then you leave the nest, right? And then when you leave the nest, you have your own little economy where you make some stuff and you spend some stuff. Okay, so as long as you are making more than you're spending, you're going to have a feeling of wealth and a feeling of rich. So it kind of, and I do relay this back to when I was in the military, which was now over a decade ago. As a lieutenant colonel, I felt like I was pretty wealthy. I really did. It seemed like we had all the money we needed. It was over six figures. I think 120, 115, 110, somewhere in there is what lieutenant colonels make on active duty. But I will say life was also pretty simple at that time. So it seems like we did have extra money, available to kind of do whatever we want. Now on the outside, running a business, making more money. However, there's more expenditures too. So really, it's up to you to kind of manage what we call in the industry lifestyle inflation. Once you say, hey, you don't want to live like a pauper, right? And stash all your stuff and die with multiple millions, but have not really lived, right? But you also don't want to live your life, and be broke your entire life and worried about money, because that's stress and that takes a toll on you too. So you're really kind of balancing that, and that's called life. It's wherever your lifestyle is and your burn rate. So people that are struggling with this, talk to one of us or somebody out there that's smart with money about how to kind of balance that. You do have to live within your means. If you command a higher salary, then you can have more means, right? So just something to think about. But certainly, the feeling of rich A lot of folks that don't have much feel completely rich because they're satisfied with their entire lives, relationship, health, all of that, and they're very grateful. That's kind of a mindset. And there are certain people that, you know, if you give them $5 million, they would feel broke, you know, and say no, right? So they've done studies that, I'll close with this. So they've done studies that, you know, people that always thought that they, you know, getting $1 million would make them rich. Once they get to $1 million, they're like, I've never been so broke, right? Because you have all this, all these things, the commands for your money. Same thing when they get to 3 million, the same people, you know, say, nope, I'm not rich, or 5 million. So I don't care how much money you have, you know, if you're in your mental mindset that you don't feel rich, you're just not going to feel rich. Right. So that's for what it's worth. I still think you know, worldwide, $100,000 is well above the top 1% salary in the world. So here in the US, and depending on where you live, and if you live in a big city and you work in in tech where everybody's making a lot of money, you know, you can feel like, well, I'm not doing that great. Yes, you are. If you're making six figures doing anything with your time, you're doing fantastic. You know, maybe you can't buy a yacht, but you're doing great. So, all right, with that, thank you so much for listening in. Make sure to continue to forward your questions on in through either email or text or through the website. Thanks for listening in. With that, we'll see you back tomorrow. Bye.